Hi folks, welcome to this second part of your video series on designing performance pay plans. We're going to talk about profit sharing plans now, and they can take a few different forms. They can be current distribution, which you see at the top here, and that means that any of the predetermined employee share of the profits of the company can be given out in the current period, whatever that is, in cash. Sometimes some companies defer it. So what they might do is they might say, well, we're not going to pay you out now, but we're going to set aside the money in a like a little savings account for you that the company would set up, and it would be available for distribution to employees at a later date. And some people go do a combination plan, which is a combination of give them some cash now and then defer the rest. Now, what are some of the issues in designing profit sharing plans? First of all, it's the formula for determining how much profit you're going to share in. Most times we say companies should set it up in a fixed manner. So that, say for example, a company's determined ahead of time that of all the profits they make in a quarter, maybe they will distribute 25% to employees. So if a company makes a significant profit, employees might want to have an idea of, well, what is that going to mean for me? How much might I get? Well, sometimes they might tell employees that they might share that 25% equally amongst all the employees. So they might divide it equally, or they might allocate it a different way. And I will talk a little bit about the issues for allocation a little bit later. But the idea is employees want to have an idea of what percentage of what's being allocated to employees they can actually get. It's better for motivation as well, because then employees can do a calculation and figure out how much they're eligible to get. The other thing we say is that a lot of times companies will have meetings during the period, or at least post on their website the amount of anticipated profits that they might earn for the period. So again, employees can use that as a benchmark to determine how much they might get as a bonus, if the formula is such that employees have a fixed percentage of whatever the company is going to allocate. The next thing we talk about is employee eligibility. So who might be eligible for the bonus, for the profit sharing plan? And a lot of times, some companies would look at eligibility based on the groups that maybe contributed the most to profit. All right. But one of the things we recommend is that because some workers have a direct influence on profits and some have more of an indirect influence, we normally recommend that all employees are able to share in the profit sharing of a company. And here's why. A salesperson, for example, it's a little bit easier for them because they may turn around and say, well, you know what, I know what I've contributed to sales revenue, and so and I know what I've done to try and cut costs, so I have a better handle on what I should get in terms of profit sharing. It's a little more determinable, whereas somebody who's an administrative assistant may not have that, right? They might not be able to influence sales or cut costs to the same extent that maybe some other groups are able to. But the idea is, clearly, if we need those positions and we're paying those people, they're doing something to help the productivity of the company and therefore the company's ability to earn profits. So we normally say that all employees should be able to share in some kind of profit sharing. Now comes the question of how might we allocate the profit sharing amounts. So allocation can sometimes be based on salary, your salary level. So you might get a certain percentage of your salary. It could be based on seniority, could be based on your individual performance, or some combination of it. Now, one of the advantages of doing it based on your salary is that it can maintain the certain proportion of profit sharing pay in your compensation mix. So that's one of the benefits. It kind of stabilizes the percentage that it would be of your compensation. The other thing that we sometimes say is that many companies might say, well, why don't we allocate the bonus to the groups that have had the most impact on earning the bonus, so they might get a bigger share. One of the reasons why organizations I've worked with haven't decided to do that is because throughout the period, some people are already getting a sales bonus or a sales incentive, which is over and above the company profit sharing plan. So companies have to determine what the right way is to allocate it across employee groups. But again, if you do it at least based on individual performance, some companies have actually defended that because they say it addresses what they call a free rider problem, which is people who didn't contribute shouldn't get as much of the profit sharing. So sometimes you may find that although everybody gets an opportunity to share, office workers, say for example, may share in it less than, say, other groups like salespeople or production people who can more directly impact it. And we also look here at one of the issues being payout frequency. The reason that's an issue is because it depends on how often companies monitor and report profits. We normally recommend that companies don't pay out any more frequently than quarterly on any of their profit sharing plans because profits are usually measured at the end of a quarter. And it's very important that employees, to keep the system motivating, have an idea of what your financial results are and how much is eligible to them for profit sharing on an ongoing basis. So what we used to do, or what I used to recommend some clients do, is have a look at what you think your profit sharing results would be at the end of a particular quarter, and maybe a month before the actual quarterly results are released, have a meeting with your employees or make a posting on your portal page of your website to let employees know what your expected profits are, okay, about a month before that quarter, so they would get an idea based on whether you're allocating at an individual or a performance basis, or maybe you're allocating based on salary. However you're doing, people would have an idea of how much they might expect to get. So it is very important that the communication is there, because you want to make sure that it's communicated to employees. If you look, for example, at some companies like WestJet, they actually hold a profit sharing party every 6 months, at which time the employees actually receive their profit sharing checks, and they're treated to a company celebration. So they make a big, it's almost like an award ceremony for it. And that's not a bad idea, because the employee is recognizing each and every employee at that time and thanking them personally for their contribution. So that's just kind of a nice touch too. So that's another way you can communicate and congratulate employees for their efforts. Now let's have a look at stock plans. Stock plans are another way that employers can individually or as a group recognize the efforts of their employees. And let's look first of all at a stock bonus. Sometimes companies may decide not to pay cash incentives or cash rewards or merit pay or whatever. They might just give you more stock in the company as a substitute for some kind of other performance pay. So it doesn't cost them anything. They may just give you extra stock in the company. And now how a company does it is up to them. Usually they don't go out and reissue new shares. They usually buy back some shares and may make it available to their employees for distribution. Some companies will allow employees to buy stock through a company payroll deduction program. So usually these stock purchase plans are based on seniority, and they're also based on your years of service. So sometimes we find that people with longer seniority or greater seniority and who have a higher amount of pay, they might get to, or sorry, let's just look at seniority first. Maybe your seniority is you have 5 years, so maybe they allow you to take 2 to 3% of your pay. And sometimes the company may match that, or they may put in 50 cents for every dollar you put in to help you buy that stock. Now, say for example you have 10 years, you may get to put in 3 to 5% of your salary, which is higher than 2 to 3%. And because probably after 10 years of service you would be earning more money, that's how the years of service and the level of your pay would enter into how much you can purchase in stock. So again, you have to remember too that when the stock is being purchased for you, it's being purchased at a market price. So therefore, if the market price is going up, it's going to take more money just to buy a share, right? So sometimes your contributions, depending on the price in the marketplace, your contributions to the plan may buy you more shares or less shares. But it's really capital appreciation that you're interested in. So regardless of what you pay for them. Say you wind up paying $25 a share. If they're at some point in time in the future worth 30 or 35, you've made $5 or $10 a share, and that's the idea. Okay, some companies give certain levels of employees stock options, and I don't want to get into this too much because then it starts to sound too much like an accounting class. But basically what an option is it gives an employee a right to buy stock at a predetermined price at a later date. So for example, maybe you start with a company and the company allows you the opportunity to buy shares a year or 2 years down the road at $10 a share, and you sign up for that right. 2 years down the road, if the shares are trading at $15 a share, you can still buy them at $10 a share, and therefore you've made $5, right? If the shares are trading at $8, obviously you're not going to exercise your right and you may not buy the stock. But some companies are using a lot more stock options now at various levels of the corporation just to make sure they keep people motivated and focused on doing the best that they can on a daily basis, and making a connection between employee contributions and the actual share price. So it can be a motivator for many people. Now, another type of system that we see used for designing performance pay plans, if it's not cash-based, if it's not stock-based or profit-based, it could be a non-monetary reward plan. So say something, for example, like merchandise awards. So maybe, for example, if a company, say you work in a mall, right? You might be able to get, if you work in a mall, there might be some stores that allow you a 10% or 5% discount on food, clothing, whatever. There's also travel awards. I used to work for a company, and what we used to do is for people who have performed well, we had a condominium in Arizona, and what we used to do is we used to send our employees down there, the top performing employees down there for a week, and we would pay for their flight, and they would have to pay for their own food and everything else, but it was all looked after by us. So a travel award. Symbolic awards, your textbook refers to a golden banana. Anything could be a symbolic award. Anything like a trophy, a certificate of completion. So most of you will get a diploma in HR management or whatever programs you graduate from. Degrees, those are all symbolic of achievement, right? Employee of the month could also be something. You get recognized by your employees, perhaps a letter congratulating you for what you've done, and being specific on what your contributions have been. And then of course there's earned time off. Some companies do this differently. I know one company I used to work at, we used to raffle off an extra 2 days vacation, to employees who performed well. And sometimes we used to even give it as part of a Christmas present or like a bonus at Christmas time, but that was more of a raffle. But if you didn't do it as a raffle and you were doing it specifically based on performance, earned time off is a good thing as well. The other thing you can do is a lot of companies, and it's not part of necessarily a specific achievement that employees have had, but they just give it to them as a perk, and it's part of an indirect benefit. We talk about maybe allowing people to take flex time. So they might have to work certain core hours, maybe between the hours of 10 and 3, but between 9 and 10 and say 3 and 5, they have some flexibility where they don't have to be at the office before 10 or after 3, but they certainly need to make up the time that they've missed throughout the week or throughout the month. So those are just some other examples of non-monetary reward programs that could be used as part of your designing a performance pay plan. Now, again, make sure you check your online course, know what's due this week and next week, and make sure you plan for what's due beyond this week. Have a great week, and it was nice chatting with you.